This is Coast to Coast Radio show. I have now my favorite boxer because Errol Spence was, but I've replaced him. He's number 2 now. I got Nico Ali Walsh. Thanks for coming on my show. How's it going right now?
It's great. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Very happy. I had Zoom technicalities the last time, but we get to do it better this time. You're with Mike Tyson right now, right?
I was with him on Monday.
How was that?
I mean, words really cannot describe how that was. I mean, I've been watching Mike and his training videos and him with Customato and his fights, since I was a little kid. But he's one of the guys that inspired me to become a boxer, and watching it in person is like going in a time machine. It's crazy.
It was fascinating. Mike Tyson was so excited to meet your grandfather, Muhammad Ali. It blew him away. You're meeting Mike Tyson. It's blowing you away. See how life comes in full circle?
Yeah. Well, you know what? My first time ever meeting Mike was at my grandfather's 70th birthday in Vegas. And during that time, I didn't really appreciate him as a boxer and as the athlete and just the icon that he is. So I've met him so many times throughout the years. I was honored enough that he came to one of my amateur fights and cheered me on in the crowd with my family. And our families are just so close. And
yes,
it's really amazing.
Now, when I see you, you do not fight like your grandfather, Muhammad Ali. You remind me of Sean Porter.
Really?
I know Sean Porter. I got to know him. Aggressive but smart.
Yeah.
With a good jab, good power, and the way you come in harder than you do Ali. You're more like sting like a bee. You are more a sting like a bee and then float like a butterfly. That's kind of your style. Can you describe your style to everyone?
Well, I mean, I think my style is just so strange to me. Obviously, I love my grandfather's style. His style is amazing. Dance, dance, dance. That's my style a lot in sparring. That didn't work for me in my amateur career because there's not time to dance in the amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's get to business. It's work, work, work in the amateurs. But I love my grandfather's style. I love Mike Tyson's style. That works for him. But my style is just strange. I think it's very unorthodox. I go from southpaw to orthodox, and I don't know how to describe my style.
Now, you're going to go pro. Now, think about this. You start winning. You get on the roll. You get a couple knockouts. You're an Ali. The intense social media scrutiny that you're going to deal with, the distractions. You're going to be on First Take. You're going to be undisputed. The Ali, the larger-than-life figure, and people are dying for a new star. So there's going to be so much put on you. How do you deal with that?
I feel like I've dealt with that pressure in different aspects my entire life. I've obviously always been an Ali my whole life. So throughout growing up in school, it was strange, and there was pressure there, little amounts here and there, but definitely with boxing, taking up boxing, it's a whole nother world of pressure, and I've experienced it in my amateur career and just training in the gym, sparring with guys. Everyone wants to kill me. Everyone wants to take off my head, but I get used to it, and I'm looking forward to it, actually.
I'm glad you mentioned that. How do you deal with the trash talk where they want to come at you, try to taunt you? You're an Ali, you're not this, you're not that. How do you keep your game plan that your trainer tells you during the fight to avoid anger issues where you could get clipped?
Yeah, well, definitely I'm not the anger type. I don't fight with emotion at all. I've got a ton of people talking trash. It really doesn't faze me. It sounds very cliche that it doesn't faze me, but it really doesn't, because I love Mike Tyson's quote where he said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And it's very true. The trash talk normally stops as soon as they get hit. So, I mean, it's more prevalent in the professional career that I have coming up.
Now, speaking of that, 2 of your favorite fighters are kind of quiet guys who are more assassins, like Canelo and Errol Spence.
Yeah.
They're very quiet. They use their fists as they're talking, but they're very focused, but they're very methodical type assassin types. So do you kind of consider
Right.
yourself that type of guy?
I mean, it depends on the day. You know, for the most part, I would say that I am the assassin type. I love Canelo. He doesn't say. Same with Manny Pacquiao, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't talk. They just work. But I love the fighters that talk. I think there's outside of the work that you do, you have a responsibility as a fighter, if you want to be a popular fighter, to entertain. And my grandfather really brought the entertainment aspect to boxing. It's not just there's a million great fighters out there that can fight, that can win. There's not a lot of fighters that can do that while entertaining and while being funny or
Yes.
even being hated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this attracts people. This brings a crowd. This brings attention to you, and it's really good for the sport.
Definitely. You kind of led me. You're doing a good job of leading me into my next question. Your grandfather, Muhammad Ali, who at that time in the 60s, there was a vacuum of heavyweights where you didn't have the excitement. He came in, did his talking. He floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee. I know you said that's your favorite term he used. He floated like a butterfly versus Liston, stung like a bee versus Foreman with the rope-a-dope. He
Yeah,
ended up stinging him. He floated like a butterfly versus a killer. I mean, Liston I did my research. He was really, really good and powerful. And Ali
yeah,
showed a lot of courage for a young guy. He was like your age, fighting one of the most menacing, intimidating guys in the world, and he
yeah.
beat him. And that's
It's
courage.
crazy. Yeah. What it is, it's scientific. I mean, and you have to be. I'd rather be a smart guy than the tough guy. I know a
Mm-hmm.
ton of boxers are tough guys that aren't so smart, but they can take a hit and they can win. I'd rather be smart about it and leave the sport with all my faculties.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did. He was very methodical, and he thought about, like you said, he stung with Foreman and he with Liston. That's what you have to do. You have to be able to adapt. You can't fight the same fight every single fight.
The greatest fighters of all time were the guys that had the adaptability, like Sugar Ray against Hearns. That was different. He fought Hagler different. Sugar Ray Robinson was different. Floyd Mayweather makes different adjustments. So that's something. Is that something you think about going pro? That I got to be able to adapt. If I'm fighting somebody maybe taller, I got to come in. If I'm fighting somebody short, I got to bust them with my jab. Do you think about
Yep.
that?
Of course. I mean, I do a ton of thinking. I've always been great in school. I've never had a real problem with school, so I've always been the big thinker type, and I use that same approach with boxing. I think a lot, and there's a plan with everybody, and you of course, like you said, if you're a tall fighter, you got to go one way. If you're a short fighter, you got to go another way. I believe that where I'm at right now, my style isn't very strict to one way. I can fight like Mike Tyson one day or fight like my grandfather another day. And you can use these different tools to help yourself in any situation.
Definitely. Now, Ali was also strong when it came to social justice, where he took a stand against to me, in my opinion, a very unjust war. It was unpopular at first, but then people really grew to see his courage, that took away 3 years of his time. They took his license away. He came back and battled with Frazier. But in the 60s, just in my opinion, watching him, he was unbeatable. There was no human being that ever fought heavyweight could beat him in the 60s. I think he'd have wiped Frazier and Norton, all those guys away. But in the 70s, he had to use his brains more because he wasn't in that type of physique shape. So he had to use his brains more the older he got. Do you take away from that?
Well, I know that, like you said, I believe Vietnam, my family obviously believes that the Vietnam War was an unjust war.
Me too.
We're Muslim, so we can't go to war. It's against our religion. And that's what my grandfather ended up getting scrutinized for, is saying no to being drafted into that war. And just race and social justice, all those issues that, are still going on to this day. Just as common as they were back then. It hasn't changed drastically. My family's very big on that, and I take that with me with boxing. I don't want to just be a boxer. My grandfather used his platform to help others, millions of others, and that's exactly what I want to do.
See, this, you know what I love about you? This is why you became my favorite. You talk, there's a lot of people that talk problems and complain. You've always talked solutions. Let's do this. Let's create this. Let's create a better racial environment. Let's create better cops. Something that's dear to me because we both lost somebody in Chicago. I lost a cousin. Instead of, or let's put social justice and stop the violence. Let's combine all this into one big stirring pot and attack it that way. Let's deal with stop the violence. Maybe we could build some Nike plant in Chicago where you can increase more jobs. Let's get these kids off the street. You talked about education and stuff you want to do. I applaud you with that because that's unique where you want to do both. And you're talking about going back and helping the community. That's so important, especially with kids. I saw a gang member leave the gang and end up being a corporate millionaire. So it's possible. And they'll see an Ali. You coming to Chicago, they'll be like, man, you inspired me to get off the streets. I see you. You coming here. You show that you care. That's so important for athletes to do that. And I listened to you talk. I was so impressed with that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Chicago, and before I was born, I lost my cousin to gang violence in Chicago.
Me too.
Yeah, and it's really crazy. People don't understand how common it is. A lot in Chicago, but I mean all around the country. And there's a ton of racial injustice, especially in our climate today with the police, and it's really out of control. There's always a solution. People, in the media don't really talk solution as much.
No, they never do. And they like to perpetuate the problem. I'm in the media. I'm a solution-based guy. I think if we start to get the kids educated off the street, you're going to start to see the trickle-down effect of the racial issue, because now you got to respect these kids who are leaving the streets, who are entering corporate America. And that kind of changes the narrative. So you can't just throw there a bunch of thugs. Now, guys like you and other athletes can help these kids change their lives. And you can see testimonials and be like, man, Nico Ali Walsh, he helped me. I wanted to be a gang member. I don't want to do that. I went to school. I'm starting a family now. And that's important to me.
Yeah. Keeping yourself busy is important, but above keeping yourself busy with a job, it's being educated. And
yes,
I really believe that I know people who are racist. I'm not friends with them. I don't associate myself with them, but I know them. I live right here in Vegas. I see it. I've seen it. And I personally believe that the divide between someone who's racist and someone who's not racist is ignorance. And that little part of ignorance is being uneducated. If everyone were to educate themselves, whether it's on Muslims or the black culture or the Japanese culture, the Native Americans, anything, you wouldn't be racist. You can't know fully about a race and hate them, because it makes no sense. If you think about it in your head, being racist, hating another person, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. So
listen, I want to tell you something. I'm of a Christian faith. My best friend, who named after your father, John Muhammad, he is so happy I'm interviewing right now. That is my best friend. I will beat somebody up over if anybody ever mess with him. We always argue and stuff. We don't agree a lot, but man, do I love him with all my heart. So I do understand that about being together and agreeing to disagree. It's okay. That's part of being friends.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm impressed with you? You have a good head on your shoulders when it comes to marketing. And this is where the racial issues comes. Because remember when Muhammad Ali did the Decon Fog commercial, Sugar Ray Leonard did the 7-Up commercial, Tyson did the Pepsi commercial. All of a sudden, African Americans are not getting those when it comes to boxing, not NBA, because they're doing all right there. Hopefully you could, I'm working with my marketing team where we're going to give you a proposal where you could do more commercials and be that guy, because they promote different ethnicities, but the black people. I heard this one promoter say, Terrence Crawford's not really marketable. Really? He's one of the best fighters in the world. That has to stop. And I hope that you and your younger generation changes that.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard since I was a little kid that it's your generations that's going to change things. And I thought that was just the old people talking, but it really makes sense. My generation and the generation below me, those are the people that end up changing things. It's very few. As you get older and older and older and older, you rely on the younger generation, your kids, your grandkids, to start making changes for their kids and their grandkids. And I'm starting to realize now I've always been a huge social justice supporter just because of my family and what my grandfather taught me, what my mom taught me, but now it's so important now with everything that's going on now. It's just crazy.
But it's also to be positive. What you're doing is positive. Instead of fighting and negative and tearing and doing, what you're doing is positive. I want more people like you to come out. So I'm gonna promote that. Before we go, there's a couple of funny stories you said. You were in the 4th grade playing basketball when your grandfather came in. What happened there?
Oh my gosh. I actually just saw, it's weird how the world works. I just saw my 4th grade basketball coach. He's a teacher at my college. He's a professor. And I am a couple months. I was at a basketball game. I was 4th grade, and me and my brother were playing basketball, and out of nowhere, my grandfather just pulls up into the bleachers. And at that point, I didn't really know. I was too young to understand what fame or. I just knew that he was a boxer, and that's pretty much it. I didn't know he was famous or anything, but everyone was oohing and eyeing over him, and we took a bunch of pictures, and that was really fun. That was really fun.
Now, I want to tell you something. Your aunt, Layla Ali, I've been covering boxing for 20 years, and she fought and destroyed, I forget who it was. It was an HBO fight at the Garden, and your grandfather comes up to me. He's there with all the family members. I froze. So he was nice enough to just wave at me. He said, this dude is freezing. I can't say hi to him. So your grandfather just waved to me, and I didn't realize how tall he was. And I was like, wow. Everybody's taking pictures, and I was like, wow, I got to hang out with Muhammad Ali. So that was so cool. Now with his grandson, I'm your biggest fan. You're 168. Is this correct?
I would fight at 168. I walk around at 80-ish, but I really feel like I could crack at 168, so I would stick there.
Okay. Would you ever consider 175?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I spar heavyweights currently, I just to get any kind of work in that I can. And whatever my team decides for me, I'll fight. That's not to me a fight.
Now, listen, I got a friend. It's my homeboy. His name's Marcus Brown. He lost to Pascal. I believe he's gonna get him back in the heavyweight. You might end up moving up there and fighting him. That would be interesting because when you do a pay-per-view fight, I just want to let you know whether it could be Canelo moving up. It'd be Ali versus Canelo, or Marcus Brown, or the Russian kid that Arthur Beterbiev. Oh my gosh, that guy! If the pay-per-view numbers, because of your name, I'm going to let you know, are going to be insane. Yeah. So I'm rooting for you to go on a roll. I'm going to be at your fights, covering your fights, putting a mic in your face. I'm wishing you well. And I'm going to tell you something. Ali's win championships. They win. Muhammad won. Layla won. You got the DNA of a champion. So they win. And I hear the way you're talking.
I've got to show myself.
That's
the
all.
name is great, and it carries weight, and it'll help me, but I got to do the rest.
I'm going to tell you something. I like your mindset. That's why I believe. I've seen a lot of young guys before they become champs. I said they're going to be champs, and you're that type of guy. You have the mindset and the hunger and the competitive greatness, and that's what Ali had. He had competitive greatness. That put him a slight edge over Norton and Frazier and all the other guys, He had that inner drive, round 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those little back end rounds, he took over. So that's the key to being a champ.
You know, and I hear a lot of stories of people coming from the slums, like Mike Tyson's story, coming from the slums and becoming heavyweight champ. And those are amazing. But what my grandma showed me is that you don't have to be from the slums. You don't have to come from nothing to have the hunger that you came from nothing. You know, my grandfather didn't come from the slums. You know, our family has been middle class, you know. And my grandfather, he came from a rural area of like Louisville, but he wasn't poor growing up, and he still had that hunger of someone who was poor, and that's important.
Thank you very much. This is a terrific. I'm so impressed with you. This is a terrific interview. I really appreciate it. Enjoy, become champ,